They tried to erase him. As a boy, he was trafficked, silenced, and buried under lies.
We're very graceful with everybody else in our lives, very rarely with ourselves. Trauma grows different fruit. So if we're not dealing with the tree of this thing, we'll never deal with the fruit of the thing. A lot of people anchor themselves in the things that were done to them, not by them. It's hard enough going through life as a man, not beating the crap out of yourself, having done arsehole stuff. If I was going to have to overcome this thing, I could not allow myself the room to be a victim or to tolerate the victim mentality. I just knew intuitively if I did that, it would be the death of me.
John refused to disappear. This episode is his fight for truth, healing, and the courage to expose the darkness, not just for himself, but for every survivor still living in silence.
At some point, we have to turn our scars of shame into medals of honor. That's a very important thing to do, regardless of how you came upon it.
Have you ever wondered what masculinity even is in the modern era? Are you ready to move beyond the macho bully or the soy boy archetypes? I'm Marc Azoulay, and this is the Men's Therapy Podcast. Together, we'll explore how neuroscience, Jungian psychology, and Buddhist philosophy can transform your life, your marriage, and your business. Are you ready to deep dive into the minds of men? Let's begin. Hello, welcome back to the Men's Therapy Podcast. I'm your host, Marc Azoulay, and I'm here with a very special guest, Dr. John King. He's talking about something that never gets talked about. You know, we've had a few guests that talk about male sexual abuse, which is taboo enough. But he's going to talk about male sexual trafficking, which we have never had anybody talk about, and I imagine is one of those kind of dark underbellies of the world. So Dr. King, is a trauma survivor himself. He's also runs the Phoenix Collective, which is a group for men that are survivors that have been through trauma to help them all get back and build the best lives possible. So, John, welcome to the show.
Thanks, brother. Nice to be here, mate. Bit smoky. Sorry about that. I'll open a window.
Yeah, and for those of you that are not seeing the video, John is smoking a pipe, which you were chatting about a little bit earlier in the pre-show. Big fan of that. It really adds to the mystique.
It's made me cleverer, mate. I'm cleverer.
Exactly. Yeah. Just it adds a little Sherlock Holmes, a little bit of, dignified Southern gentleman aspect. It's nice. It's a good vibe. So yeah, let's just dive right in. I'm really excited to hear the details of the story and to kind of blow the lid off. In your bio, you mentioned that you're also one of the witnesses and whistleblowers on the Epstein case, which is, back in the news. So take it away. Like, what is your story? What are you going to share with our listeners today?
Well, it starts 18 months ago, but 62 years ago. So I'm 62 years old, and I'm actually an indigenous Australian, Manu Kariati, from a man from the Red Dirt. So I'm an Aboriginal man, and my birth records are all skewed. There was a policy amongst the Australian politicians to breed the black out. So by the time you got to the third generation of people who had been raped, ripped off families, etc., they were blonde-haired, brown-eyed babies, which was my situation. So our birth records are all wrong and all this sort of stuff. And so I went back there and I found my family. I found my family 18 months ago, but that brings us back to the birthing story. It looks like I was placed with some people, and those people were the ones who trafficked me. We would call it trafficking today. Growing up, I just thought it was my normal childhood. I thought you had sex with the woman who raised you, that you were taken to parties and they filmed you having sex. And I was trained to be very good at oral sex on older women, and that was the party trick of the places that I went to. So roll that forward now to when I was 45 and, 15, 16 years ago, and I had total recall of those events. Up to then, they were like little 8mm frames, and on one particular Thursday in August, they all just came together and they played like a movie. And for the first time in my life, I realized that I could put words to it. I had been sexually abused. It was the first time I uttered that phrase. It was the first time I said the words, I was a victim of sexual abuse, and it was the last time I ever used that phrase.
Yeah. Say more about that.
So your past will either refine you or define you. It'll either be the very place that you anchor yourself in, and a lot of people anchor themselves in trauma that way. They anchor themselves in the things that were done to them, not by them. It's hard enough going through life as a man, not beating the crap out of yourself for having done arsehole stuff. So we're very graceful with everybody else in our lives, very rarely with ourselves. And I realized if I was gonna have to overcome this thing, I could not allow myself the room to be a victim or to tolerate the victim mentality. I just knew intuitively if I did that, it would be the death of me. And I've seen a lot of people like that. I've met a lot of people in my travels and my work and my research. And so many of them are parked in a previous existence, as it were, and they don't ever graduate from that. And I think that's probably the biggest thing that inhibits healing is allowing yourself to bask in the attention that comes with a victim mentality or a victim narrative, be it childhood sexual abuse, be it military, be it police, be it a divorce situation or a violent incident. You can park in those places. And we even have aspects of our society that celebrate that parking as opposed to that wholeness. We at some point we have to turn our scars of shame into medals of honor. And I think that's a very important thing to do, regardless of how you came upon it. This, mate, trauma's trauma. It grows different fruit. So if we're not dealing with the tree of this thing, we'll never deal with the fruit of the thing.
I like that you have that, outlook. I think that connects with me. It connects with a lot of men, right? I think we hate being victims. And you're naming, like you said, this thing where there's a lot of victim enabling in our culture. I think victims are celebrated. And I think on some level they should be celebrated for being honest and starting a healing journey. But like you said, it's more about what you do with that versus being stuck in that area, right? Being stuck in that, disabled, held back spot.
Isn't that the case? But it's in the naming of it that actually comes the freedom. There's something I learned early on is like information application. How does it go? Information, revelation, application, transformation. So when I learn something, I had this happen to me. It's not just an external thing, but it's my thing. But only once I apply those rules to myself, I go, okay, this happened to me, or here's a truth. This is now my truth. And I apply it, do I start to transform? People who get locked in that victim cycle, they never give themselves an opportunity to transform. It becomes their identity. They were abused. They were trafficked. They were wounded. They saw too many murdered people when they were on patrol. It becomes a thing. And we actually have a tendency to develop societal cliques that affirm that. Even if you're in a different environment, like I look at how far I've come in my recovery, and I'm very thankful for that grace. How far I've come. The people I started the journey with are not the people I'm still in relationship with now, because those people back then, they were quite comfortable knowing John 1.0. They had no concept of John 2.0 and who we could become.
Yeah. I mean, something we talk about on the show a lot is how the therapy industry, fails men. And I think that's one of the main reasons is, I think traditional therapy, talk therapy, being overly feminine keeps guys in that victim place. We call it like validation therapy, right? It's just like, poor, pitiful you. Yes, your feelings are legitimate, which again, you need that. It's a step along the path. But, to kind of marry our language together, I talk about going from victim to hero, right? The idea of you take your wounds and they become superpowers. And it sounds like you've done that process, right? You've moved through the pain and turned into something where you're now giving back to men and you're creating spaces where they're able to talk and able to move beyond.
Oh, thank you for that. I don't know if I'm comfortable with the thought of I've moved beyond it. I think it's a little bit like alcoholism. Hi, my name's John. I'm an alcoholic. My name's John. It's not an identity for me, but it's an awareness that probably for most of my days, I will have to manage my trauma to some extent. I manage it better now. Funny, I was talking to Melissa, my wife, this morning about something. I had a series of dreams come out of nowhere last night. It's like, what the hell, man? Like, I've been at this thing 15 years. I'm supposed to be the expert on this crap now, and it's starting to come up. But you know what? It brought me back to a conversation with her about what were the tools 10 years ago we discovered to help me get through this. So I rummaged through that old toolbox again, and we pulled out a couple that we've used as couples again, and it's like, "Okay, well, we need to do these things in the next couple of days." I think they're always that's the what I like about that toolbox analogy, is a toolbox a man always has with him, and you go to get the tool you need for the time you're in, and, I always carry my toolbox with me. It's always with me, my emotional, spiritual toolbox. Whenever I need it in public, in private, in conversation, in business, in preparation for a podcast, when I'm talking about this stuff that I don't like, it's like, okay, I had to do a series of things to get me ready.
Yeah, so let me ask you this directly then, like, what still triggers you or what can throw you back into that traumatized state? And, follow-up question, right? What tools have you found to be effective in pulling yourself out of it or maybe better words like transmuting that energy, right? Transmuting it into a more progressive energy.
It depends. Smells are a big one for me because I was raised around a lot of women, a lot of sex, a lot of smells. I remember the first time I really lost my crap in public with my now wife, Melissa, is we went into an incense shop and, bro, sandalwood makes me crazy because I was raised in all that 60s, post-60s, 70s free love, swinger type environment. I mean, bro, everyone was doing sandalwood for something. Weed and sandalwood and coke, so it was bit of a cacophony of smells. I had a challenge the other day in a big crowd, going to my daughter's graduation. I couldn't make it. I went in, there was just too many people. And so, then you go through that and I can't do it at my girl's graduation. And then, I got to spend a month living with all that, paternal guilt about not being man enough to show up and do it. So it compounds, and then you go through that cycle and stage, and now you're 3 to 6 weeks into this thing going, "Dude, what the hell? What?" Because it steps down. It doesn't just plummet anymore. It sort of seeps down. It's insidious. And then you okay, so now the dreams are back. So, all right, now I've got to start cycling up. So some of the things you talk a lot about physical exercise. The gym has been my biggest non-pharmaceutical. I've never used pharmaceutical drugs to get out of this thing. And if people do, good luck to them if it works. It just never worked for me because anything with any sort of opioid mix brought it on worse. I ended up in more trauma and more recall. Physical exercise is very good for me. Making sure my diet is clean, no sugars, no whites, no breads and stuff like that, nothing refined. Very important for me, so I tighten down. What I do is I start to tighten down on the things I know. And you made a statement about what was the most important thing. I forget how you phrased it, but I think it's self-awareness. I think self-awareness has been deliberately developing a sensitivity to self-awareness has been fundamentally important, for my recovery. Knowing when I screw up, knowing when I'm doing okay, being comfortable with both, and knowing how to address it or celebrate it.
Yeah. Yeah, and the way I talk about with my guys is, like, accepting imperfection, and, like, designing your life that actually works for you instead of trying to force your life into, like, some mold that doesn't exist, right? That's just a fantasy anyway.
Yeah, we did that. In my book, I put it as redefining normal. I'm not I'm I used to set my alarm clock for every 90 minutes because if I got stuck in deep sleep, I'd have daymares for days on end. So I would stay awake, which then meant and I would get up at 3 to go to the gym, which then meant I was exhausted at 3 p.m., so I'd have a nap, and normal people don't nap, during work at 2:30 or 3 in the afternoon. So I thought, "Well, who says that, mate? Like, why don't I just redefine what normal is for me?" And in my life, I set my alarm because I'm disciplined. I go to the gym not because I'm sick and I need the endorphins, but because I wanna be physically fit. I have a nap in the afternoon because I wanna be prepared to go home and be good for my family. So all the activities were the same, but what I switched was how I viewed them, or I rewrote the script, as you would say. You rewrote that script, so it was like, "Okay, these don't have to be negative things. These can actually be transcendent positive things."
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, I wanna bring you back a little bit in your story where you talked about that, random Thursday where all the memories came back. I guess, did you have trauma symptoms before then, but you weren't aware of it? Or what was that moment like? Because, we talked to a number of veterans, and they say kind of the same thing where, like, they were kind of, like, fine, in heavy air quotes, up until their brain kind of shot it into them, right? And now they had to go and face everything, right? There's that massive repression that is very common with trauma. But I'm curious what the beginning of your kind of healing looked like.
Um, the question of, did I have trauma traits? I think undoubtedly. I actually got an incredible sense of relief. This will sound odd, when I had recall, and my first diagnosis was borderline personality disorder, which is like a death sentence. But I loved it. I thought, oh, now I've got something to fight. Then it got changed, and I managed to be able to manage that and complex post-traumatic stress. Again, another thing that I could fight. So, whereas my first wife, she couldn't cope with any of that sort of stuff. It was a Thursday, and it was daffodils. So when I was a child, I would walk from the place of my residence to my high school, and, so home was horrendous, lots of sexual abuse, violence, all that sort of stuff. And I would end up being engaged in sexual activities to protect my little sister. Because even as a young boy, I think my first memory is 4 years old. Even at 4, I knew my job as a man and as a boy was to do something to protect my sister. Um, and every spring I would walk to school, and the lady next door, she had these plum trees, Mrs. O'Doul, and she had this little green bank, and she'd planted daffodils along there. And every spring, the daffodils would come up, and it was one more year that I'd made it. And one more year, I'd made it one more year. I'd come through winter one more year. I'm doing okay. I can do it. I can go. I can go. I can go. And so it was a Thursday, beautiful spring day in Dallas. And I remember distinctly, like, well, the sky was like Simpson-esque, blue, puffy little white clouds, man. And I remember stepping over these daffodils and going, "They're the most beautiful daffodils I've ever seen," and bang, it came back. And my wife at the time found me in the backyard, curled up in a ball, sobbing. And from then, man, I traveled the world speaking in churches and nonprofits, ran a very elite coaching company, and I was a stuttering mess. Couldn't go out in public, and ended up losing everything. My marriage, my children, my business, church. Yeah, it's a big day.
That's a big day. Yeah, so that was the rock bottom, and I know there's not, like, an easy answer to this, but I wonder, like, what got you moving from that place? Because, I mean, if anyone can answer that, right, I mean, that's the money question. Because so many guys can get caught in that undertow, and it can just spiral out, unfortunately, maybe ending in suicide or an overdose or something like that. So what got you moving again?
They were all very possibility. Even my first relationship, she didn't think I'd get well. So, suicide was, you need to do something about this. You're never going to get better. It was an active encouragement towards, removing myself from a familiar family situation that she found embarrassing. I think if I had cancer, it'd be okay. She could have coped with that, but she couldn't cope with the fact that I'd had recall, and somehow, as a victim of childhood sexual abuse, for want of a better term, it was my fault that they made pornographic movies. It was my fault that I was made to read pornography. So, therefore, I was some sort of, pervert, whatever. She couldn't cope is what really came down to.
Yeah, yeah, I mean, that's awful that you were getting those messages, and it does happen with trauma survivors, right? It's like, people need to make sense somehow, and the simplest answer is wrong, but the simplest answer is, "Oh, it's the victim's fault."
It's your fault. Yeah, this is on you. You didn't cope better. Well, how the hell am I supposed to cope with that? Like, I haven't remembered these things now. And it took me 5 years. I was constant for 5 years. I'd be walking around seeing visions of pornography, seeing visions of orgies and stuff that I was involved in, man. I'd be preaching in church, and these things would be playing out like a movie. It's like the weirdest thing, brother. So look, I don't know, man. I think I'm an old rugby player, so we're smart but not clever. And I think I like a good fight. At some point, I remember sitting in a shed I had at the time and thinking, "This was done to me, not by me. These bastards aren't gonna win." I think it's probably, in all honesty, it came down to something not as, philosophically nuanced as that. It's like, fuck them, you know? They've ruined the first half, they're not gonna get the second half, you know?
I think that's honest, man. I mean, I talk about with my guys of, like, dark side motivation, right? Like, I think for a lot of men, it's like, it's anger, it's spite, it's insecurity, it's loneliness, or like, that is what we need to tap into that, versus it's often not like this lofty ideal of like make the world a better place, or I
Well,
want to help people, or I
those
want to heal the
people
wounds of the past.
lie.
Yeah, but people lie. Yeah, it's just like fuck them. They're not going to win. I think that's a very masculine primal
Yeah.
motivation, right?
And if people ask me that too about why didn't I take them to court? Well, in Australia, there's no whatever that thing is, statute. You can go back any time, but it would probably take 7 years. That means I've got to stand in a courtroom with a prosecutor whose sole job, is to trigger me and make me look like I'm mentally unstable. Now, you got to understand, this woman who raised me, man, she is premio gaslighter and manipulator. To be able to manipulate a child and do that, and he was just as bad, to have me set up. And some of the things, it's like, why do I want to be in a close place with these people? And okay, so I did confront them, I did talk to them, and this is a really odd thing, but I really wanted their approval. I really wanted them to accept me. I really wanted, as a man, my father and my mother's approval. It wasn't till I saw the woman who raised me start to groom my son that I thought, "Fuck you, I'm done." I was actually in Australia to catch up, to have some connections, and I saw her, and it brought back a whole bunch of memories about things she did to me. It wasn't anything sexually explicit. It was her ability to be able to manipulate and run down a small boy based purely on the fact that he was a boy and destroy his self-esteem in just mere minutes, and then turn it around so he was doing everything to curry her favor. And I put everybody in a car, and I just disappeared. We had to be there for some visa stuff, and just disappeared because I understood what was happening. So all of that to talk about, I still wanted their approval and affirmation. Weird thing. I'd realized what they had done, and they'd never taken responsibility for it. Weird thing. And still there was this need to somehow try, and I had to come to a place where it's like, I'm just gonna move on, man. These parents would never do that to a child, so therefore I'm orphaned, so therefore it's done, it's over. And I think people find that hard. They want 'em Life's supposed to work out somehow, and we're supposed to put in the work, and everyone's supposed to recognize that, and everyone's supposed to wanna have relationships and take responsibility like we're trying to, and apologize to us. But they'll just deny it. They still deny it to this day that anything happened.
That's brutal. That's brutal.
Yeah, but, it's okay, man. Like, it's like, fuck them. My life's awesome. But they didn't win.
And your son is not had the same experience you had, right? So it's like it's a way to like break the chain there, you know? And hopefully, it ended with you, which I think is like that's the biggest win.
Yeah, and, one of the reasons and justifications was because the guy who raised me and the woman who raised me had bad childhood, therefore I should be compassionate. It's like, no. I Look, I didn't even bath my kids. I bathed them once. I didn't understand why, but I could not see my daughter or son naked. I tried to change their diapers once, and I think I did it once for every child, but I could not. I could not hold my child and wipe a child clean, anywhere in their genital region. I never understood why until I had recall of what happened to me. And so I couldn't be it messed up a lot of my fathering and intimacy. I have some of those challenges in those areas, expressing of emotions. I'm probably borderline Asperger's in some ways, either physiologically or environmentally. So I could never do it. And one thing I couldn't tolerate was the thought that, the victim becomes the perpetrator. I thought that was just bullshit. I thought that was the worst excuse of anything I'd ever heard. And I was gonna break it. And it cost me. It cost me a lot, to such a degree that, some of the stances I took, with my ex-wife at the time and then my kids at the time, broke relationships. Well, she was one of those, estrangement type people, um, you know, massively got involved. It was more important for her to win the children than anything else, sort of stuff. But I was prepared to do whatever it was to keep my kids safe, even if I saw me as an asshole or overprotective or whatever it was. I was not gonna allow this to happen to my children.
If you're enjoying the podcast so far, please hit the subscribe button and leave us a review. Your feedback helps us to reach more men and inspire them to become the best versions of themselves. Thank you for your support. And now back to the show. Yeah, I think that's the honorable way to do it, right? Is like, stop it, right? I want to go back and ask you about, like, again, the symptoms or the experience, like you said, feeling really uncomfortable, being unable to change your children, some of the flashbacks. And I want to make a caveat to our listeners, right? Like, I do think male sexual abuse specifically is extremely repressed in a lot of men. So if you're listening to John talk and you have something similar, like, go talk to a therapist. Don't use this as a diagnostic, but talk to somebody who might be able to diagnose you, because there is a lot of repressed memory when it comes to sexual trauma, especially in men. So I'm curious, like, how has that impacted your life, and what, I don't know, whether it's limitations or triggers, whatever word you want to use, have you experienced, weird moments have you experienced that started to point, the finger towards this past?
It wasn't before I had recall of them. It was, I look back and think, well, yeah, you used to fly off the handle, and it got progressively intense. And then all of a sudden it just exploded. My brain just obviously gave it up. I remember with Melissa, we were sitting one night watching the movie, Le Mans with, is it Paul Newman or the other guy? The guy who
No,
did all the pizza sauces.
no, not
No,
familiar with it,
whatever.
unfortunately. Yeah,
Someone will know. They'll put
yeah.
in the message.
We'll put it in the comments. Yeah,
Newman, Paul Newman, I think it was. So anyway, whatever. Yeah, it is. But hush, now my head's gone. So anyway, I'm sitting there watching this movie called Le Mans because I thought, oh man, I asked her if she'd ever watched it, and she said no. I said, oh, it's good. I thought it was good. We've got this on. It was springtime, had the windows open, and we're about 10 minutes in, and I start to get really agitated. But I'm thinking, what are you agitated for? Just fucking relax, man. Woman's safe. Everything's good. Every cool. And then about 15 minutes in, I start to fucking jump up and down. Why the fuck are the windows open? Don't you understand that they could come for us? Don't you understand that they might come through the door? Who the fuck left those windows open? And I'm just losing my shit, man. And what happened is that and it all cascaded into this thing, and she's just sitting there, you know, not terrified for her own safety, but terrified because this was happening to a man she loved. 6-foot guy screaming out, 220-pound guy screaming, crying, howling over what? And what I remembered was, at this particular part in that movie, I was taken from the room and I was engaged in oral sex. So, I never saw that coming. It just turned up, and now all of a sudden I'm having to have this conversation with this woman about something that happened and explain it, unpack it. So you're not only just having to unpack the incident. I define them as incidents and episodes. Episodes was where it always impacted someone else. Incidents was where it impacted myself. If I had recall, then I would have an incident I've got to deal with. And I would explain that and talk to Melissa about that. Hey, listen, I'm having a problem. This happened. Like the dreams last night. I had this. I got up this morning. She went to the gym. I went to the gym. We had breakfast. I said, babe, this happened last night. I need your help working me through this. An episode was where the bucket just slushed and the shit went everywhere. And that's what happened then. So in the middle of this, you're humiliated because you didn't hold your crap together. You're humiliated because all of a sudden you're like an 11-year-old boy and you couldn't fight for yourself. And as a then 45 or 50-year-old man, I'm supposed to be able to protect myself, but I'm not. I'm an 11-year-old kid. So that's all that. And now I've got shit all over the walls because I've verbally sprayed the person I love. And now I'm feeling like an asshole. And now I apologize. And wow, she's so bloody nice. She forgives me, which makes me feel like more of an asshole. And then I've got no frontal lobe, so short-term memory is gone. So every 15 or 20 minutes, I'm like a goldfish. I forget that I've actually asked for forgiveness and gotten forgiveness, and she's been very gracious and all that sort of stuff. And so the cycle goes on. So at some point, you just understand that there's a wash. There's a wash that's coming. If this happens, I'm going to try and stop it from happening. The most important thing I can do is try and stop the peak. Try and keep it from being an episode to an incident. An incident, I feel like crap. Episode, I'm going to feel like crap for days. But if it flows over and manifests itself, then I've got to put some things in place to be able to take care of it on the other side.
Yeah, that's really great. But I'm curious, like, what can Melissa do? 'Cause I get, like, a question from partners too, where it's like, hey, they know, PTSD for me, it's a lot of veterans and first responders, and they're like, "How do I support my man?" How do I support somebody who's going through this? Because in those moments, especially like you said, 6 foot, 220 pound, it's like, it can be scary. It's hard to know when and how to jump in, or if you should, or just let the storm blow over, right?
And we actually, when we were writing, my book deal with it, we she would end every chapter because she would talk about how we did it together. And we got through that and we found that was very healing. And that's another reason we started the Phoenix Collective, is to be able to give couples a chance to work through these things together, because you're very insightful there. It takes two people to work it together. So, Melissa, and if you want to have a fun podcast one day, mate, we'll get her in here and we'll have one together, and she'll give you the other side. It's very interesting when, yeah, when we do that together. It's really powerful, really quite powerful. She she had to go through a lot of understanding that, um, if I was in China and I was drowning and everyone else was looking at, I had this thought one day, I was drowning and everyone was standing on the beach looking at me, and I'm screaming at them as loud as I can in English about what was happening to me, and no one understood it. No one understood what was going on. And that's a little bit like what happens when you're having an episode. I'm screaming at the world. I'm screaming because I hurt. I'm screaming because I'm drowning. She had to learn that I was screaming not at her, but I was screaming at everything before it. So that was a major turning point in her ability to be able to, walk with me, not judge me, which I think you've got to have a partner prepared to do that. And unfortunately, I understand why my first wife couldn't make it. Yet she'd had years of whatever it was, and she just didn't want it. She just decided she couldn't cope, and so she didn't. Melissa's never knew me before I had recourse. She only ever known me afterwards. So that was one thing. She understood that this wasn't personal. It was personal, but it was personal to me, not at her. And so we would develop some language and things. Sometimes I'd just take out the front door and I'd go for a walk for 20 minutes. And I'd practice what I was saying and how I was going to say it. And I would come back and my first words were, I've been practicing this. This is what I want to say. Because when I'm telling her, I might be telling her like this. And in my head, I'm telling her like this. And she's understanding that, well, I'm emotionally deregulated and I'm trying. So the first thing we did was learn how to have a language between each other. The second thing was that she would always walk towards me. Never never wa never away from me. She would always walk towards me, and she'd hold my hand, and she'd look at me, and, and she'd see me, and she'd see that I was trying, and that this wasn't something I wanted to do or the man I wanted to be, but here I was, 11-year-old, um being fucked in the face by a room full of strangers while they got their rocks off watching Le Mans. And yeah, I'm 50 and 200 pounds, but somewhere I'm still an 11-year-old boy just fucking fighting for survival. Not that I ever stayed, whatever, but she would walk towards me and hold my hand. That physical contact, that presence, that looking at me, not with eyes full of shame, but eyes full of life and love and acceptance. Like, I understand this is a scary moment, but I see you. I see you. I see you. And then the moment she did that, man, I'd fucking melt. I'd be like, "Oh, okay." And then I start feeling like a dick straight away because I lost my shit. But I think that's important. And I think having honest conversations, authenticity is a very big thing for me. Um, it, if it's the only real way to get whole is you've got to be authentic. Like if you're being a dick, you're being a dick. If you had a really good day, you just had a really good day. And if you've apologized to people and they're shaming you by making you feel guilty about stuff that happened once upon a time, and you can say, no, listen, I apologize. And that's just one of the reasons that a relationship with my eldest didn't go well, because she was put into a cycle of being allowed to constantly condemn dad. And one day I said, no, I've apologized for everything, 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 everything. I said, it's enough. It's enough. If if we're going to walk forward, we walk forward together, because I can't carry the guilt of this anymore, and the shame of it, because, as men, that's probably come the hardest things we do is the guilt and shame we drag forward like a dead body.
Yeah, that bag that we drag behind us, that those all those regrets, all those grief, all that stuff that goes unprocessed for so many of us. It doesn't get authentically, like you talked about, like, put out in the air. It doesn't get aerated. So it becomes these, like, evil monsters and demons that haunt us for so long.
It's fucked up, man. I love men. We're so fucked up. We carry we we carry this shit around.
Yeah, but we can heal, but we can heal, and I think it takes community, and it takes ritual, and I'm curious about the Phoenix Collective because I think it's that you've done that, and I was checking out your website, and it sounds like, you employ group work, you employ ritual work. So can you tell us a little bit about that? Like, what structures are in place for male survivors?
So, the challenge I had was, my time was limited. on one human being. Um, I was doing a lot of work with a lot of, very high-end, so they'd made a movie on my life called Stopping Traffic. Went out there and did a whole thing, received 80 awards, all this sort of stuff. Every movie theater I went to, say there's 300 people, 100 men would come up to me afterwards with a story about how they were sexually abused. I mean, literally, brother. It was that many, like, the stats are through the roof. And then I started to do some work amongst, our elite, pipe hitters and, elite military folks to find out that 60%, 70% of those guys or higher had been sexually abused or physically abused. And they had this, "You'll never fuck with me or mine again" attitude, and they went to war. And now that's the challenge. They can't admit that or talk to a childhood stuff because the VA take the benefits off them because it's a pre-existing condition.
Which is
So
fucked. Yes,
totally
that's true.
fucked. It's the same with coppers. It's
Yeah,
the same.
yeah.
It's same. I was applying to work for the police because, I thought it'd be good. I wanted to. I've always wanted to be a copper. But when they found out I was, you've got PTSD from sexual abuse, no way, can't do it. No, we can't have someone on the force with PTSD. And I looked and I said, "Are you fucking kidding me?" I saw 6 people as I walked through the bloody foyer that have got PTSD. "Whoa, not in our branch." I thought, "Yeah, wanker." Just not self-aware enough to give these people a chance to get anyway, I'm on a sidetrack. So so the Phoenix Collective arose because I wanted to help these people, but there's only one of me, a little bit of like what you're doing. So I took my book and I've tried to give them small wins. So every day, my wife and I do a video about a part of the book together, and then we get for about 4 or 5 minutes, and then we give them an exercise for 4 or 5 minutes. I think, yeah, I'm gonna or get offline. I'll give you access to what we do, mate, so you can have a look at it. And if it can help some of your people, like, because I know you and some of your guys are gonna help some of mine. So, maybe there's a way we can help each other's community. And so they go through that. So for 6 weeks, they go through every day a small exercise. Because the problem with trauma, it's the same like dealing with any sort of addiction, is you might go 2 or 3 weeks and be fine, and then you'll fall in a heap and you think you're worthless. So we've set it up so there's this series of small wins. And so that's their ritual every day. And it's not hard. It's 4-minute video, 4-minute exercise every day. Oh, not going forward and doing all 4 weeks or 6 weeks that are up there is the hard thing because, we're obsessive compulsive because of a range of things, and we think if we take it all at once, we'll get instantly, "Well, I can bench 500 pounds, and my man tits will disappear." So, no, bro, just do try and do 2 knee push-ups. Be really happy for you. So that's it, and then we've got a weekly call with everybody that's in the program at the moment. They go through that. Um, and then there's success calls twice during a 6-week period in depth. And if they want coaching, they can ask for more coaching. As a community, it's only new. We only launched it probably 2 weeks ago. Actually, last week, last Saturday.
Oh, wow,
So
brand new.
oh,
Okay.
yeah, oh yeah, we're an
Yeah.
ugly pancake, mate. You know how you make pancakes in the morning and you try and give away the ugly one? Yeah, we're ugly pancaking this thing. So we got a whole bunch of beta testers in, and we're all testing it out because I wanna have that feedback from people. Okay, what worked, what doesn't work, and all this sort of stuff. So yeah, it is. Yeah, yeah, all the up like the book's been for years, the movies, they've done 2 documentaries, like the speaking, all that stuff has been years. And I got to a point where, I got tired of telling the story, to be honest. Like, I got tired reliving that stuff because it's what it's like in therapy, it's always a look takes you. I got tired of it. It's like, I don't wanna tell it anymore. Because I'm so future focused, to go back there just is detrimental. There's so many good things, so many ways I want to touch and help people. Like biohacking trauma, how do you do that? Like, how do you unpack that stuff? And so I want to make some evergreen content so people can go, okay, this is how I can deal with it. This is how I can go through it.
Yeah, I love that. And I love that it's bite-sized, like you said. I think that is more effective than the big binge, right? Or even than like the intensive work, right? Because it has to be something where it's your daily life. Because just like you were mentioning, right, trauma can rear its ugly head at any moment. But if you're constantly in the practice and discipline of engaging with it and thinking about it, then you're insulated, right? You're kind of vaccinated against that. You know, I'm curious. You mentioned biohacking and some holistic view. So I'm curious because you've done some research around that. Like, what are some holistic things that can work on trauma, beyond just talk therapy? And I'm saying this as a talk therapist, right? There's stuff that are beyond my scope and beyond our scope that I think can be really effective for people.
Biohacking is a really interesting space. I enjoy it as a longevity practice in a healthy space, but it's so heavy on very expensive bits of equipment, and everyone's got all this flashy crap and whatever, man. But it's like, well, I know my people, I know my audience. That's not obtainable, that stuff, and it's actually not necessary. So for instance, um, a a a cold plunges they're really fancy at the moment. You get a cold plunge, 4 or 5 grand, put it up there. Okay, yeah, but if you take a cold shower before between 1 to 3 minutes, it resets the vagus nerve, increases dopamine by 250%, and builds resilience and strength. Like any man who can stand there watching his pecker shrink for 2 minutes is gonna step out and think he can conquer the world, you know what I mean? So, and that's just one thing. Weight training, resistance movement. Like we can all go to the gym for $29 a month or $30 a month. There's no reason why not to. Yes, you might be fat, ugly, and hate yourself. Yeah, it's okay, bro. Put your shoes on and walk around the block for 3 months, and you're going to lose 20 pounds. If you come off sugar, white flour, processed food, and you eat, and you'll probably know this as a therapist, if you start with a high protein, high fat breakfast at the same time every day, go to bed at the same time every night. When you get up in the morning, make your bed so you've had a win. You've had high fat, low processed food, great for brain health. It probably deal with 60 to 70% of people's anxieties and depression. So just then, so if I'm getting up, I'm doing that, I'm making my bed, I've got a good win, yes. I'm having a cold shower because doing it at night's just horrible. I'm too much of a whooshy man. And then I'm going for a walk around the block for 20 minutes. I've literally taken up probably 30 minutes of my day. If I would just do that, just start with doing that for 7 days. Watch yourself when you hit 30 days. You're going to have lost probably 10 to 15 pounds. You're going to feel you've got discipline in your life. You've established a routine and you're feeling like a superhero. And you've still got 60 to 80 pounds to lose. But bro, you've lost 20. So, that's awesome. And breath work, intentional breath work, we're moving it from the sympathetic stress into the parasympathetic. And my simple program for that is 4, 6, and 8. 4 in, hold for 6, 8 out. By the time I do 1 minute of that, I've reset my parasympathetic. Anybody can do that. And keeping your feet on the ground, just resetting your circadian rhythm so you can get some sleep at night. So that's 5 things. 5 simple things, non-pharmaceutical. Then you get into curcumin, and I've got a mate who makes a great turmeric product, 1,500% more bioavailable. Depression's inflammation in the brain. This reduces inflammation. That's another one. And journaling. When I go into a Bed Bath & Beyond, I want to slaughter everybody because they're all Karens or something. But no, there's not, so I need to stay away from that. Or because of the fragrance, or when I'm in a pub, or when certain songs, or when I'm in a crowded room, or when I'm sitting with my back to the room. Like journaling and pattern tracking for yourself. So you become aware of it. So 5 or 6 things, man.
Have you ever found yourself in a situation where you wanted to open up, but you were afraid that it wouldn't be taken well? You ask yourself, what's the point? Nothing's going to change anyway. So you do what you always do. You push it down, numb out the pain with a drink, a night out, or pornography. I've been there myself, and I know that men lack the outlets for emotional expression, which is why I founded Men's Therapy Online, a healing hub for men's mental health. If you've been knocked on your ass or just crave meaningful connection, join Men's Therapy Online, a community of men who just get it. We offer individual therapy, men's groups, and powerful retreats, all led by licensed therapists. At Men's Therapy Online, we will help you to get back on your feet and take your life to the next level. Start your journey today at menstherapy.online. That's it. Yeah, I mean, I agree. Right? I think those are the things. And that, like you said, it brings in discipline. I think it brings that sense of power and control. I think when someone's life, especially in the beginning of this process, feels so out of control, whether it's trauma or I think you mentioned weight, or depression or anxiety or whatever it is, it's like any kind of foothold you can get, it has massive, massive payouts, you know? Yeah. Yeah. It just being able to like have that idea in yourself to like, yes, when I make myself a promise, I will do that thing. That's the main thing.
That's key, brother. Like
Yeah.
making the promises to yourself are the most
Yeah.
important ones. And
Most important ones. Yeah.
as men, we have a tendency to make these, stupid ass promises that it's just about impossible. I remember working with a guy who was so fat and useless, mate. So fat, this guy was useless. And he was going to get this stomach thing done and all this. And I said, no, don't do any of that. He said, I'll lose weight with it. It's funny, I put on 70 pounds in 3 months. I had candy bars while going to the gym. I got a 30% body fat, mate. When I couldn't see my dick, I knew I had to do something about it, man. So I was going to show him how to do it. It took me 9 months to lose it doing fish and broccoli. I ended up doing a bodybuilding competition. But I told this guy, I said, okay, I'll do it. What do I need to do? I said, okay, you got to spend a week buying some shoes. A week? I'll just go down and say, no, you got to spend a whole week. Okay, now what? You got to spend a week putting those shoes out of the cupboard and putting them by the front door. Oh, this is bullshit. I'm not doing this enough. I said, hey, fatso, you spent 20 years like this. You're going to do exactly what I tell you. Then the next way was put them on, walk to the mailbox and back. Next week, round the block once. Next week, do whatever you want, man. And hey, why don't you throw in one knee push-up for me? So, this guy was away because he had these frustrated wins all the way through. And I'm a big goal guy. I love setting myself impossible goals, but I've come to understand that the best way to achieve that is by a small series of bite-sized obtainable ones. And if some of your people are at the front end of the journey, midway for their journey, or stumbling around in their journey, is let them sit down with you and take some time and maybe sit with you or one of your team members and ask that question. Here's my situation and the problem I'm looking with. Help me break this down into bite-sized goals. Because if they sit with you, Mark, and they go through this and say, well, it's weight, it's marriage, I can't communicate, it's trying to have sex, it's trying to instigate sex, how do I get there? Because sex, mate, with trauma victims, that's one of the things we just never unpack, especially sexual abuse stuff. No one seems to want to have the courage to talk about that.
Yeah. What was that like for you? I mean, did you notice like sexual dysfunction, anything?
Well, I've been having sex since I was 4. So, that's pretty dysfunctional.
Yeah.
I've been at it a while.
I mean specifically like premature ejaculation, erectile dysfunction, right?
No,
or
really
dissociation.
wasn't.
Right?
I didn't know what I liked. I had no idea what it was like. All I knew was to perform. I was trained to be very good at certain sex acts, and I thought I had to engage in those in order to be there. And it wasn't till my relationship with Melissa, when she wasn't frigid sexually like some other people I was involved in. She didn't have those sort of hang-ups. She taught me that sex is communication and you should be talking to your best friend regularly. And when I got a handle on that, I started to understand this is just a natural part of what we were. So, I'm a Christian man. I became a Christian early on after this whole journey. Not after this, but before this journey. Was in ministry for 20 odd years. And within the church, there was no way to process abuse. There's very few ways to have shame-free conversations about sex, which is, I think, is a shame, because in an institution like that, that's where we should be having the most positive conversations about them. So here I was, I'd been in ministry for 30 years, traveling the world, preaching the world. And I was 52 or 3 or something, and I'm having a conversation for the very first time with someone I love, or someone I was engaging in sex with, about, I didn't know what I was really doing. I don't even know if I enjoyed it. I think I enjoy it. I like, banging away. It's fun. I like that stuff, but I don't know because I don't know me. And so, we did a lot of different things. We had a lot of honest conversation. We laughed a lot, fell off the bed a lot, nearly got caught by cops a couple of times. But so, all of this became a very natural, nearly teenagerish type experimenting with each other. And it was very, very healing. And I think what's interesting, I did a survey, it's I think I sent you a copy of the book. 137 people that have been sexually abused and what their challenges were and were not. And, the things that they had trouble coping with, the things that they enjoyed. And probably the biggest thing that they had trouble with is talking to their partners about it because of shame or guilt. Or I was talking to one lady, she was a wonderful person, stunning, middle-aged, just dignified woman who'd also been a hooker, an escort, and a pole dancer, and really got off on some bondage stuff. And so she was married to a guy who was exactly the opposite, white lace, folded his underwear before they made out sort of stuff. And here she was now caught up, understanding that she was gonna have to have a conversation with him about her background if she was gonna get whole. And if she was gonna unpack that, she was gonna unpack a lot of things. And then if she's gonna go there, she's gonna have to continue unpacking it because her sex life was unfulfilling for her, and she knew what it was to be fulfilled. So there's this whole range of very complex interpersonal things. And that's why I think authenticity, is very important to me. And it's been the cornerstone of my relationship with Melissa is we're authentic in our conversations, and we become used to uncomfortable conversations. They don't have to be uncomfortable. They just have to be nuanced, different. And so I think a lot of guys don't know what to do with that. That's why so many of them turn to porn. They think they can outlive it there, but they're not your tits, mate. Your tits are in the bed next to you, probably wanting to be, fondled. And here you are batting off to computer anime. Like, dude, grow a set. If you're not getting it, and then there's a whole thing of guys going 10 years without getting laid. Like, dude, trade in the model, man. Like, do something about this thing. You got to do something. You have to have some honest conversations with yourself. Either you never want to have sex again, or you want to have sex and batting off to anime girls that look like they're 15 or 16. Bro, is not how you do that shit. Don't do that shit, man. Go buy some if you've got it, but don't do that shit, man. It's not manly.
Dude, it just hacks the brain, right? Well, it breaks your brain, right? It's just like, yeah, it totally disconnects you from the whole situation.
Yeah, so you could always come. My church was fun when I was running it. I don't know, my church now, if I was running a church, it'd be a bit fun.
Sure. Yeah, this how you gave, this is how you gave your sermons?
Yeah, dude, I preached a great sermon once called, The Fig Tree Temple and the Hooker. So that was good. Whatever, man. You'd like some of my sermons. Fun.
Probably, yeah. Yeah, I think we need more, like, hard-hitting shit, right? It's like, you gotta pierce through, I think, like, this veil of dissociation that so many people are under. This veil of, like, fine or normal, stuff we were talking about at the beginning of the show, that I think gets yeah, it just drags so many men down. I see so many men, like, cosplaying or acting about being a man, but like you said, they don't have that authenticity. They haven't taken the time to know who they are.
Well, it's hard, isn't it, mate? The messages are so skewed. Like, what is a man? Like, the only thing harder to try and define for half the population is what is a woman. Look, it's really not that hard. It shouldn't be that hard. And I think how I'd probably help someone with it is what do you like and what are you comfortable with? That's where the problem we've spent so much time living from the outside in. We're really not aware of what this is. I'm a poet, man. If you ask me who I am, I'm a writer and a poet who likes to shoot guns, lift heavy weights, and do martial arts. But brother, I'm a big sap. Like, give me a romantic poem, and I'm all day. Give me like my favorite movie of all time is like 16 Weddings or 16 Dresses or whatever that rom-com is where they sing Benny and the Jets on the bar. I love that movie, but bro, I will weep my way through that movie every time. That and Sisu or 300, it's like,
Right. You get the full spectrum.
dude, and that's what it is. It's not our thing. It's us. What is it that you love? What are you passionate? It's okay to be.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it kind of dovetails my next question is like, I ask it to a lot of my guests is where do you think masculinity is going? Like, what is the modern man from your definition?
I think a man should be able to provide for his family, protect himself, protect his family, be there when those on his inner circle need him. A man is prepared to do whatever it takes and has equipped himself to do whatever it takes to do those things. So if you providing for your family is selling hand soap in Bed Bath and Beyond, knock yourself out. If it's putting John Deere tractors back together, knock yourself out. I don't think any of those things are wrong. Like, I don't think every man needs to know how to shoot a gun or hunt. I can't. I wasn't brought up with them. I've trained myself to do those things because I want to be able to protect my family. I'm very grateful to live in America. But I think a man should be able to protect himself and his family. I think a man should know how to fight. Even if it's just putting on boxing gloves and having a go. I think that's important because not for me, because I want to take care of my family. And I believe as men, we should be able to step into the gap and protect. Provide. Am I prepared to work at Home Depot to put food on the table in my home? Yeah. Am I prepared to work at Home Depot in the morning and Lowe's in the afternoon? Yeah. Because that just is a man thing. I think that's part of it. And I think that's part of what's being lost is that sense of, and I think men like doing that. I believe that's part of our created being. We were given a job from by the Creator in the very first, and we're called to tend the garden, take care of it, have one woman to take care of, and whatever that takes, man, whatever that does. Have some kids, stuff up being a father because there's no manual on that, you know, and inflict it on your grandchildren, I suppose.
I like that. Yeah, I'm hearing like, yeah, provider, protector, duty, honor, right? I think those are extremely masculine traits, right? This idea of like showing up when it gets difficult and not letting yourself fail in many ways, right? Just like keep coming back.
Prophet, priest, and king is another way I see it. Is like you've got to be prepared to be the spiritual head of your household in whatever form that takes. Um, be that prophet, be able to look to the future and say, look, this is the way I think we should walk in it. And that king is like, this is I'm going to take responsibility for everyone who lives here, and I'm going to manage it and work through it, and I'm going to help, give protection, provision, direction. Yeah, I think so, brother.
Yeah, being that service king, right? And not being a tyrant, but being the king, the benevolent leader, right? That can see the matrix in many ways, right?
And I think that's our role. And then it gets into, are we going to offend people in the audience? And yeah, whatever. But well, I've women are easily deceived by what they hear. Men are more easily deceived by what they see. So, men will be led astray seeing something like look, a bit of skirt. They'll be led astray seeing a bit of skirt. A girl drops a gear, she'll get it on. Women fall in relationships and marriages because someone's going to sweet talk them and tell them about her self-worth and value. And I think it applies to other aspects in life. And one of the things that Melissa values is with all this terror and fear that's happening on, I'll sit her down and say, babe, it really doesn't matter what's happening in the Ukraine. It's unfortunate what's happening over in the Middle East at the moment, but there's really nothing we can do about it. What we can do about it is go for a walk and take the dog. That's what we can do about it. So let's just get off social media for a little bit here. We don't need that. All those people are making crap up anyway. And I think you can be that voice of steadying. And as a man, you've got to be. And the reason you do that is because you've set yourself apart. You've got some extra beans in the cupboard. You're understanding that you're prepared to step in the gap to your family when it comes, and your wife shouldn't have to worry about that. And I think that's part of that journey of defining yourself within a marriage relationship.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, I agree that like, masculine and feminine are different and complementary energies.
Yeah, it's not hard.
It's not, but it is taboo these days to even just say that, right? But I think that's true. I think it's 100% true. And I think men are those providers, right? And women are the receivers. They're much more nurturing, they're much more open, they're much more, able to be touched by the world. And men kind of like build the world, right? I mean, we engineer it, we design it, we create these structures, we create the walls and the gates and the towers and all that stuff, right? Like, and you need both, right? Not one's better than the other, but you need both to create society and to create a family.
It's I don't think it's complicated. I think we've allowed it to become complicated, but and And people might look at that comment that you made and think, well, you're denigrating us in this role. No, I'm not actually denigrating anybody. I'm just saying there's two roles. And are there exceptions to the rule? Yeah. Yeah, but that's why there's exceptions to the rule. We're just saying in general, when men in general are trying to define themselves, it's okay. Just be that. Be masculine. It's okay. It's not dirty.
Yeah, and the world needs it. I mean, the world needs good men.
Desperately needs it. Common sense, man.
Well, John, I really enjoyed this episode. I feel like we could keep going, but we do have to start to wrap up here. So as we're ending, like, where can people learn more about you, get the book, learn about the Phoenix Collective? Where's the hub?
PhoenixCollective.app. If they go to PhoenixCollective.app, go there. That's in the John King universe. And just have a look at what we're doing. And if they want to have a talk, book a time. We'll sit down. I'd love to have a chat. And I've got some people I want to send your way. And let's just try and help men because men are awesome. I fucking love working with men.
I'm curious, for the Phoenix Collective, is there a cost for it? Or are you currently accepting beta testers? Or
we are accepting beta testers with scholarships and people in, but there's a free level. There's probably 20 or 30 videos. At the moment, there's about 150. People can download the app. I've got Apple. If they've got Android, we can send you a link. We're just getting it processed through Android at the moment. There's a community level, which is a base cost. And if people want to come to our foundation courses, depending on how much they want to, etc., there is that. And so, yeah, but we're really just, we're filling it all out, and we'll talk to people and we'll make it work for them, man. Because we want to get as many people involved as we can.
Great. Check it out. Yeah, I love that you have like that free tier or ways to get scholarship, right? So like if you're listening and you just think there's any value, non-zero value, go check it out, right? Go check it out. It can't hurt you. He's saying it's like 4 minutes a day, right? And like it might be that nudge you need to make the change.
There's 100 videos called PTSD Minutes that talk to people about how they can overcome their trauma. Just download the app and watch those for free.
Yeah, and if you want to invest more. But again,
because they should, the cheap bastards.
Yeah, well, welcome. Thank you so much for being on the show. And listeners, thank you so much for tuning in. If you like what you're hearing here, go check us out, right? menstherapy.online is the hub for everything for us. We got blogs, we got podcasts, we got free courses, we got all the shit. If you want to talk with a therapist, we got that too. We got men's groups, we got divorced dads groups, we got it all. So menstherapy.online is the hub for everything connected to this show. And check out Dr. King and his stuff. All that stuff will be in the show notes if you're interested in learning more. So thank you so much for tuning in, and we'll see you next week in the episode of the Men's Therapy Podcast. Thanks for tuning in. If you enjoyed today's episode, please subscribe and leave a review. And don't forget to visit menstherapy.online to learn more about the work that we are doing to support and inspire men. Until next time, keep moving forward.